If you think you could change my mind, it's too late, I'm addicted to where you want. Tell them they're wasting time.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Academy for Performing Arts at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. Your safety is important to us, so please listen attentively to the following house rules and safety guidelines. We ask that you confine yourselves to this floor and that you do not go wandering around the building. Washrooms are located on the right along the hallway outside of this room. Male washrooms are on the left along the hallway, and female washrooms are on your right. Eating and drinking or chewing of gum is not permitted in this room. Please either put cell phones on silent or turn them off at this time. There is no fire drill planned for today, and therefore you are not expected to hear an alarm. However, in the event of any emergency, an alarm will be sounded, or you will be notified by our security personnel. Do not use the elevator. In this case, you will be required to exit this hall and the entire building immediately by using the 2 exit doors at the back of this hall. Then, proceed through the glass doors which you used for entering the building. If you are in any of the washrooms, we also ask that you leave and exit the building immediately. We ask that you do not run or panic, but you must proceed briskly. Once outside the building, please go down the stairs to your right and proceed to the muster point located at the southwestern car park, the Hibiscus car park, where you will assemble, remain, and await further instructions. Our security personnel remain ready to assist in this evacuation process. Thank you for your attention, and do enjoy your time with us at UTT's Academy for the Performing Arts.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I think we can do a little bit better than that. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
All right, are we prepared for a day full of music literacy and education discussions?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Great, welcome. I am Dr. Mia Gormandy Benjamin, and I will serve as your chair for today's proceedings. The Music Literacy and Education Conference stemmed from a conversation Mark and I had in Indianapolis, Indiana at the Percussive Art Society International Convention in 2017. So when I say Mark, I am referring to Mr. Mark Lokwan, who is present here today as we celebrate his 20th anniversary of composing music for Panorama. We discussed his 20th anniversary for composing music for Panorama, which was soon approaching, in addition to the need for more steel pan scores and online educational resources. Since 2017, the discussions continued with Pat Lokwan, Akua Leith, Amrit Samaru, and Melissa Jimenez. In preparing to celebrate 20 years of music that has been so influential to Panorama in particular, Mark was determined to include an educational component to the celebration. As an educator, I immediately shared some of my own ideas that I developed over the past few years. Ultimately, all of our ideas merged and culminated in what we will be discussing in our presentation later today, Panitation. Panitation is an online subscription-based site that houses pan scores, educational materials, academic papers, blogs, interviews, and any other materials associated with the steel pan. We wanted an opportunity to share the development of the project with you, and therefore felt the need to create a platform for others to share their ideas as well. The Music Literacy and Education Conference then became this platform that not only showcases the ideas of our local educators, music therapists, and performers, but also creates an environment for healthy discussions similar to the ones we had ourselves, so we can forge a united future for Pan and education. I do apologize for the late start. We had a bit of technical difficulties, but we will begin our first panel now. Throughout the day, if you would like a cup of coffee, tea, lunch, anything to munch on, Roban Sidewalk Cafe opened their doors for us today. They don't usually open on Saturdays, so we have a cafe that we can go to for refreshments. It's just outside of the Academy for the Performing Arts, across the street on Keith Street. So please feel free throughout the day to visit Roban Sidewalk Cafe. Our first panel, titled Pedagogical Techniques to Enhance Music Literacy, will feature 4 speakers, ultimately 3 presentations. The first is Mr. Damion Phillip, and he will be speaking on enhancing sight reading skills of students using speech cues through the use of marching drums. He will be followed by Mrs. Candice Achaiba and Miss Adriana Chaya, and they will be presenting on music literacy from primary to secondary school, the transition. Then we'll have Dr. Elizabeth DeLamater, and she will present on Listen Your Way to Literacy. That's our first panel. After the 3 speakers, we will have some time for questions, answers, and discussions, and we will use that microphone right there to the center as we discuss music literacy and education. So I'd like to welcome our first speaker for our first panel, Mr. Damion Phillip.
Right, a pleasant good morning. All protocols observed.
Good morning.
Oh, I'm just making sure that we are alive and well. So as you would have heard, my name is Damion Phillip, and my presentation is enhancing sight reading skills of students using speech cues through the use of marching drums. Now, this study was based on a curriculum study that I did when I pursued my diploma in education. Right, and I saw it fit and necessary that, to kind of share what I gained when I did that research. Now, rhythm is defined as a strong, regular, repeated pattern of movement or song. And part of this research sought to utilize marching drums as a method or a means through which students would fast track them into being able to sight read music. Because in the secondary school system, I'm an educator. I'm also, at Tranquility Secondary School, and this project encompassed those students over a wide range of ages from Form 1 to Form 6, which would be from age 11, 12 to around age 18. Right? And one of the things that as educators that we face is some of the time constraints that we would have in the syllabus or trying to deliver the curriculum, right? One of the things that I realized is that after having a good grasp of rhythm, students can then move on to learning melodies. Because based on my opinion, I always think that the rhythmic aspect comes first. Now, sight reading is the ability to read and produce both instrumental and vocal music at first sight, meaning that as you are given a score sheet, you are able to read and play almost immediately. In the secondary school system, there are some hindrances to having this in actuality. Many students, based on the time constraints and the type of exercises utilized by teachers to complete the music curriculum by Form 3, still have problems with sight reading and sight reading upon completion. For this particular project, 6 lesson plans were utilized and completed during the course of this study, with a pretest being issued prior to the study and a post-test on completion. Right? Data was collected qualitatively and quantitatively by tests and opinionaires. Some of the problems that we would encounter, and some of my fellow educators here could attest to some of these things, right? School culture, the curriculum requirements, syllabus requirements, time constraints. So for instance, if we're looking at time constraints in a given week, we would, in my school that is, we have 40 minutes period, right? So we have double periods. So once a week, so you would see a class once a week, right? So you have 80 minutes with a class once a week. So time constraints is one of the main issues. Right, administrative systems, right, or educational system, which to me, from my personal opinion, needs some reforming. sources of funding. There are some instances where when the school would obtain the vote from the government, when it is disseminated down to the different departments, sometimes the VAPA department, the Visual and Performing Arts department would probably get a small chunk of that. And then depending on what you would have had planned or the things that you would need, you would then now have to still do a budget and try to fit some things that they probably might get on other things that they might not get, right? Having instruments and equipment. And I mean, even though we would not have some of the actual equipments as VAPA teachers in the visual and performing arts area, we are always creative, always finding a creative way or method of teaching, whether it be instruments or teaching music or delivering our syllabus. Teaching by rote versus teaching note, and oftentimes we would find ourselves, if we have a particular event that we have to prepare students for, most times we would find ourselves teaching by rote rather than by note, because again, the sight reading was an issue. And in my situation, having students who would probably have attended private lessons or attending private lessons is minimal. During this project, there are some researchers who, like me, sought to prove where sight reading and rhythm are correlated. So Edwin Gordon, his definition of rhythm was in 3 basic elements, which are tempo, beats, meter beats, and melodic rhythm. Essential in the teaching of rhythm is whether to teach the playing of rhythm first or to teach playing and playing of rhythm simultaneously. What is common to the teaching strategies of Orff and Kodai and Suzuki is that children understand rhythm orally first and therefore can deal with the sight reading after. However, research by Shehan found that students learn a rhythmic phrase more efficiently when taught with both visual and oral aids than when mnemonics and oral aids were used in isolation. The teaching strategy of Suzuki mentions to teach playing with no written notation at all and then introduce actual pitch and rhythm notation at the same time. In Dalcroze Eurythmics, the teaching of rhythm is given more emphasis. Children are taught to internalize movement. Children are taught with no musical notation to equate rhythms with specific movements. So hence the reason why I incorporated the use of marching drums. So 2 things needed to be done, which was 1, teaching them the actual rhythmic patterns, and 2, also teaching them the technique and how to play the rhythm drum, the marching drum, right? Because it was not just a matter of they receiving a drum and playing. They had to be taught the technique, how to hold the sticks, how to play the drum, how the drum would rebound off the drum head, how to stand and hold the drum, how to move with the drum and play at the same time. So all those were some auxiliary things that needed to be done during this project. A study by Muriel J. Bebo found a significant improvement when students were taught using the speech cue method over traditional rhythm understanding methods. Now this project, design of this project is an observational analytical type done using longitudinal research and by using a cohort study. This project included, or it encompassed 13 students of varying ranges from Form 1 to Form 3. All right, and it was the type and design of study was chosen since the goal of this project was to establish the link between the use of marching drums and speech cues and improve sight reading. And it sought to answer these 2 questions. Can the method of teaching marching drum technique enhance sight reading? And does the use of speech cues lead to a more effective understanding of rhythm and rhythmic patterns? The general approach included a pre and post testing of students. So prior to the project being rolled out, students were given a pre-test, and towards the end of the project, they were given a post-test to see if there was improvement in the sight reading, and if the methods that were utilized during the course of the study were effective. Right? So strategies such as composing, performing, listening, and sight reading activities as a means of enhancing their sight reading were utilized. Anecdotal information was recorded through observation and student journals. So the pre-test was similar in that there were note combination patterns. Right now, in the study, I did not use any long notes like semi-brief or minims because of the fact that that required rolling, which was a technique that takes a little time to develop. Right? So I utilized note combinations such as crotchet, quaver, semi-quaver. Right? And the speech cues that were utilized for each one of these were known words such as star, which would represent the crotchet, baker, which would represent a group of 2 quavers, peanut butter, which would represent a group of 4 semi-quavers, telephone, a group of 2 semi-quavers, and a quaver, and grasshopper, a group of a quaver and 2 semi-quavers. Right? And this approach was used to establish the competency level of the students. And the post-test was used to determine the success of the intervention. Now, these are the results of the post-test. Right? It looks like a lot, but it will be broken down in a little while. Right? So right here we see with the pre-test, the results of the pre-test ranging from moderate to weak, and we have a significant amount of students, over 50% of the students who were weak in the area of sight reading in the pre-test. Right? There was a moderate amount, about 41%, and we have about 5% were very, very poor in terms of sight reading. The post-test showed a significant increase, and when we look at the second column there, we see it says very good, which is over 40-something%, right? And outstanding, over 5%, good, over 25%, and we had a couple of students who were absent on the day of the post-test, right? And here we have a correlation between the post-test, the pre-test and the post-test. So the yellow would represent the pre-test percentages, and the green represents the post-test percentages. And you would see, just visually here, we have a significant improvement in all areas with all the students, all right? Some even reaching as high as almost 89%. So this research indicated that there was a general improvement in the performance, attitude, and approach to sight reading among the sample group. The quantitative data showed significant success was achieved with the use of practical activities during the period of the intervention. Students' confidence levels were increased, and they displayed more enthusiasm towards learning. And participant observation revealed that there was a marked difference in students' approach to the pre- and post-test. Students exuded excitement on knowing the post-test results, confident that they had reaped excellent results. According to Off, his method indicated that percussion instruments can be utilized to improve sight reading and to guide the appreciation of music to young budding musicians. Additionally, his method is a way of teaching children about music that engages their mind and body through a mixture of singing, dancing, acting, and the use of percussion instruments. Thus, the use of the marching drums was an effective medium through which teaching rhythm could have fast-tracked. The use of speech cues was also a strong accelerant in the students' understanding of rhythm and rhythmic patterns. What is common to the teaching strategies of Off and Coda is children understand rhythm orally first and therefore can deal with the sight reading after, reinforcing the importance of speech cues in assistance of students understanding rhythm. All right, so these were my references, and thank you for your attention. This has been my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm good here. Good morning, everyone. Well, you know, I'm not very tall, so I have to look over the computer. Okay. My name is Candice Achaiba. From the School House of Music from San Fernando. And today my topic is music literacy in primary schools to secondary schools, the transition. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Good morning to all my fellow musicians, friends, Mr. Mark Lukwan. Congratulations on your 20 years as a musician. And Professor Gormandy. I would like to thank you for giving Adriana and myself this opportunity to speak on music literacy in schools and bridging the gap, or rather transiting from primary into secondary school. Everyone loves music. It exhibits your emotions. Children love music because it makes them happy. At the end of my classes, my children always leave feeling empowered. Why? They enjoy my disposition towards them. They look forward to learning to play and read music. This makes me feel as if I have conquered or achieved the right approach of teaching music to young students and adults. Music literacy is an art that should be taken more seriously in our primary schools. It is the first and foremost art form among the secular and non-secular society. We are surrounded by music. So why isn't music being taught in our primary schools in a more productive way? Why is it taken for granted by the academia? Is it because the race for academic distinction and competition to achieve prestigious schooling is so important that other social activities are neglected or must take a back seat until our young children are in high school? Why? Music should be taught from kindergarten right up to SEA level. It is an art form that requires years of practice, learning to read music and play an instrument. It also helps to balance the life and enrich them in ways which develops their social, cognitive, and coordination skills, to name a few. Music literacy in primary schools must be taught by specially trained teachers, just as in secondary schools. Teaching young students requires special skills in which you break down the music to levels that are comprehensible to every level of every class. Each class is a step up in levels as the students are promoted. Example, in kindergarten, children are taught awareness of music and music appreciation. First year levels will be taught simple dynamics, pitch recognition, and rhythmic movements. Standard 1 to 5, gradation of musical knowledge and skills on the recorder, vocals, and steel pan. I named these 3 specific instruments because the recorder is small and inexpensive. Your voice, which is an instrument, is free. The steel pan, which we would be proud of, or should be proud of, is the national instrument of Trinidad and Tobago, and I believe all students should learn the common knowledge of learning to play the steel pan. In my 33 years as a music educator, I have seen very young children gravitate towards learning music simply because they like their teacher and can't wait for their next class. A music teacher must possess the following qualities in order to capture the child's interest and continuity. A teacher must be passionate about teaching music to children. They must have that love to teach that music. Have patience to repeat and repeat without being annoyed. Possess some psychological skills to be aware of certain basic needs of children. Example, slow learners, ADHD, dyslexia, introverts, to name a few. You have to recognize the child that you are teaching. If you cannot recognize the child that you are teaching and their capabilities, you will not be able to accomplish anything, because each child they're individuals, and everybody learns at a different rate. Teachers must be trained to see music through the eyes of a child. This is most important. Teachers must be able to break down a topic to reach a child's mental capacity level. Teachers must know their work from memory, enough to teach fluency. I mean, in my teaching, when I had now started to learn to teach music, in the nighttime, I would get up and try and learn to read all the grades, the theory especially. And I would sit down and I would memorize, you know, the books, the theory of music, the rudiments of music, and all these different things. And by reading it, I devised certain methods of my own in which I could curtail some of the long, boring theory for my children. Because children don't like to come to class and have to write down page after page after page. Okay? They like to, you have to talk it out to them. You have to explain it to them. And this is where you have to memorize enough work to be fluent with your teaching. Because, as you say, time is of the essence. Some classes we only have, my classes, I have 25 minutes to impart my knowledge to my children. Teachers must be creative, especially with instruments. And that is rewriting a piece of music to facilitate their level, composing music to facilitate a limited range of notes. You know, sometimes a child might say, Miss, you know, I like Ed Sheeran. Right? Perfect. But it's such a complicated piece of music. You as a teacher, hey, you know what? I have to sit down and rewrite this in a simple form for my children, because these children, they want to play what is the modern music. So in order for them to do that, you have to come down to their level. You have to break down that music. Teachers must be trained to teach the required techniques for the 3 instruments to suit the student's level. At the end of primary school life, I feel children should have accomplished the following. In music theory, aims to be projected: pitch discrimination, melodic contours and rhythm, reading notes in their spaces and lines in the treble clef and the bass clefs, simple timing, notes and the rest values, intervals, basic scales, C, F, G major, analyze music using basic dynamics, tempo, and articulation marks. One of the specific topics I did, pieces I did was Furlies for my children. They could have related to that piece of music. And there were things like dynamics, forte, piano, you know, the basic dynamics. And when I taught them these things, and there's the second part in the Furlies where the tempo changes to very fast, da 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 da, right? And they were able to use the basic knowledge of Allegro, Andante, certain basic levels to analyze. And you know, they took that same knowledge and they imparted it into some of our local carnival tunes, which I introduced to them during the carnival season. Articulation marks, I teach them from standard 1, second year standard 1, I teach them the most common articulation marks of staccato. They love that because when I'm teaching them staccato, they know it's a jumpy thing, and legato. So they are able, simple analyzing of music is very important. It keeps the interest of the child. Practical instruments, aims to be achieved. A level of initial grade 1 stage equivalent to the University of the West Indies steel pan requirements. Trinity College of Music or Royal Conservatory of England, grade initial, grade 1 in the recorder and vocals. Having accomplished this, these children would have had a proper grounding over a period of 7 years, ready to move into secondary school level with confidence. They would have enough knowledge and practical experience to handle CSEC music as a selected subject in the future for them. In conclusion, music literacy is a very broad spectrum with many aspects to be debated upon. What I have mentioned here today is a drop in the bucket. Bridging the gap from primary to secondary schools should be afforded to every child and every school in this country, and not only to schools that are well endowed or children whose parents can afford private tuition. Music is a very thriving work in culture, and it is time that music literacy be taken seriously with due respect and be reintroduced in all primary schools as a subject and not as an extra curriculum. I thank you today, and now I will put you on to my daughter, Adriana, who will be doing music literacy for secondary schools. But before I pass her on, you will listen to a standard 3 class who a practice session and standard 3 class recorder, playing the recorder, and they learned this from reading music, not root. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Adriana Chaya. I know most of you would not know me as an adult, as a little child, but I'm a school teacher now. I'm a secondary school teacher at Barkport East Secondary. And I'll be talking briefly on music and its role and importance to our lives. Now, I am speaking on behalf of secondary because at that level, the school that I teach at, for some reason, I always have to stress the importance of music more than the actual music itself. So daily I catch myself having to speak to the children about the skills that they could develop through doing music. So music, it improves language skills, critical thinking skills, emotional moderation, and all-around brain function. It also helps with memory, pain reduction, and stress. I talk about pain reduction because I did this music therapy session with my students where I played music that included nature-like sounds of waves and like wind blowing, and I would talk them through where their life would be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, all these things. And I would use music in the background. Sometimes I would start to play classical music, and they would feel things, and they would get emotional, and they would start opening up about issues in their lives and things that they face on a daily basis. And it opens them up to understand that music is not just one of the academic subjects that you have to do. And I make it very clear to the students that this is not maths and English. You don't have to do this. This is not something you have to do for CSEC. You don't need this to survive in life. But it helps you to develop skills, and it helps you with your brain. It helps with the left side and the right side of your brain. Most musicians, the link between the left and the right brain is the most strong in musicians. And neuroscientists believe that children should be exposed to music by the age of 7 years. Music empowers people to create. It is a powerful force that needs to be understood. It brings discomfort as you try something new. It encourages critical thinking as you explore its infinite possibilities. It also encourages creativity as you create a piece of music. It encourages self-discipline and personal growth as you work to better your talents. I speak about personal growth and self-discipline because I notice that the students, they come knocking on my music room and they want to learn, they want to get better at this instrument, they want to play together. Playing together in a band, creating music together as a team, it does something that nothing else could do. It makes you feel confident, it makes you feel things that no other subject or activity could do. It's a very empowering thing. Imagine a world where music is part of the curriculum every day. People will be more all-rounded, developed, and academia would become easier and less stressful to the students. Music taught in the right environment can be useful and powerful to both students and adults. I just want to talk briefly on some of the careers in music that we have in Trinidad. We have music teachers, music therapists, sound engineers, music arrangers, composers, and performers. Some of the tertiary education institutions that you could obtain a degree is in the University of West Indies, University of Trinidad and Tobago, and the College of Science, Technology, and Applied Arts of Trinidad and Tobago. I stress the importance of music in students' lives because I teach in a school with students that experience a lot of problems, a lot of things that they can't express, and my subject area is one of them that helps them to relieve their stress and to take it as an outlet, a productive outlet to let out whatever emotions. And I make that very clear to my students that this is not something that you have to do. However, I enjoy teaching music because of the enthusiasm of the students to do it. Music teachers should not be hostile, and they shouldn't force students to do anything that they don't want to do. If a student comes into your class and they're not willing to do the work, it's because somehow, I guess, it's happening to some sort of pain body in there that they lock you off. When I deal with students like that, sometimes I just ignore them and I try to just talk about positive things. I don't try not to quarrel with them because, like I said, music is not something that you have to do. But being literate in music, it helps you with your academics. I'd just like to close off with saying that as music educators, we have a very important role in the students' lives. And the impression that we leave in their minds and their hearts is what would stay with them as long as they live, especially being teachers in the art form. So we need to understand that it's something a bit more emotional than we think it is. So I thank you all for listening to my presentation.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth DeLamater. All protocols observed. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'd like to thank and congratulate Mark Loquan on this event, his anniversary. What a wonderful idea, and thank sincerely Mia Gormady-Benjamin. This is also a wonderful service. Thank you to Audio and Visual for setting this up. I never wanted to be one of those teachers who was an idiot about technology, but technology keeps going and growing, and somehow my brain is not keeping up. So today I am giving a presentation entitled Listen Your Way to Literacy, which I feel is especially appropriate for Trinidad and Tobago, a place where students hear, students can listen, students have wonderful ears, because as we've heard, as you know, there is music everywhere. So we begin with a, well, I said caveat, but it's not exactly a warning, it's maybe an apology. Of course, you know many of the things I will say, and you will, of course, have to customize them as you see fit. But I'm just going to present something that works for me, and I myself have had to customize this for various students, because also, as we heard, good music teachers customize their teaching for each individual student. But what I'm going to talk about today, as all of us, is music literacy, but I'm going to talk about a specific part of it. We luckily just heard about all of the amazing, wonderful things that music literacy is, and it's a lifelong pursuit, and I really love the definition from The Child as Musician, which is consistent with approaches to language literacy. Literacy in situations related to Western classical music occurs as a result of children having developed their capacity to make music, reflect on the music in which they are engaged, express their views on music in which they play, hear, or create, speak about, and listen to in order to form judgments, and read, write, comprehend, and interpret staff notation. So today, I am just going to talk in this short time about the last part, the reading, writing, comprehending staff notation. We have a whole day to talk about other things as well, and we've just heard some wonderful educators. As I said, the other elements I'm still working on as well. So a child is ready from day one. Many educators, many scientists have discussed this about when people are ready for music, and we hear music in the womb as babies. I've seen music as in the womb. I've seen some women about to give birth playing mass and thought, those babies are lucky. So when we talk about when is a child ready to learn music notation, there are different recommendations. So the Music Teachers National Association, the piano teachers in the US, usually say first grade or kindergarten when a child can read words. Many suggest that somehow they show that they can understand at least some kind of sequence, if not words, sequence of patterns. And we are pattern seeing and seeking creatures. So musicologist Zoltan Kodály, we've heard about him for rhythmic teaching. He found children in different countries when he was searching and seeking out music. He found kids were starting to really catch on when they could hear and dance to different patterns of numbers, and also hear different patterns of notes that repeated. When I was in Ghana, they would let kids try drums, and they let kids play for dancers as soon as the kids could play along and keep time. So they didn't even have to play the so-called parts of a specific dance, as long as the kids could participate and come up with a pattern that fit, or the pattern within the tempo. That was when they were ready. So to continue about learning practice and best way to learn then, the next step. We have many sources and opinions on that. The one I like is currently from John, I think it's Abend. He's a professor from music education, originally from the Hart School. And he says that we must use a seeing and aural approach, which goes right along with our first presentation. I believe in creating a nexus between seeing and hearing and kinesthetic knowledge. This goes right along with things that we've seen all over the world and that pretty much everybody believes with early childhood. Young children rather, naturally do things they learn by doing and by repeating over and over when it comes to motor skills, and then when it comes to learning other things like colors, or just learning about the world and learning nature. So if we have groups of people, if you have kids at home, if you have kids in a class, they are encouraged to get covered with paint and get dirty and get covered with nature and go out and seek and discuss. We don't expect 3 and 4-year-olds to sit in a room with a desk and be very organized and be very, most places, we don't expect them at that time to have self-control and only use 1 or 2 senses. So I really have found in my life that it's helpful to keep that approach as I go and rely on more than 1 sense. Maybe I don't really use taste to learn music, but when I figure that out, I will talk about that. So, first of all, music is a graph, and to some of my students who have never, ever learned to read music notation before, that's where we start. We start with, it's a graph. Up the page, higher on the page, lower on the page, that means something. Across the page, that means something in time. And usually in Western notation, we use measures as units of time, and that's where we start. Then if we're using an instrument right away, we can divide up the pan in different ways, and we can add reference points. So, for example, a tenor pan, we add the reference point of the treble clef, and we say, okay, so for this graph, we're going to put the treble clef, and that means that that middle line is a B. And on the tenor pan, by the way, that's pretty awesome because I'm going to quick fast forward Boop. Oh, it's missing. That's the problem. But I actually sometimes write or make a picture on my students' pages for the tenor pan. That entire second level, the top 3 lines, or top 2 spaces and 2 lines of the B is inside the pan. And so the graph can be first broken up into chunks. You can start really big and very simple. So they're learning, they've already hopefully learned about graphs, or maybe they're starting to, depending on their age. And then we get into listening, which, as I said, in Trinidad usually is something children and older folks are used to. So you must be able to reproduce music or sound without hearing. Some of us who play instruments that we play with our hands, we're not really used to producing it with our mouths. So sometimes, again, we must pause in this process for people to just get used to singing. I assigned one of my UE students last week, his assignment this week was to sing every day along to the radio. He said he's going to do that alone first, so nobody hears. And in formal theory, if you are not teaching along with formal theory, or your student doesn't have formal theory classes at the same time, you need to establish something to go along with that. So you have to establish a language. What I mean is, if they're not already learning intervals that have a name, not already learning note names, not already learning a language, that really is necessary. And that's also been talked about by many different people, including that education specialist, Dr. Freierband. Language is necessary, so you can make it up. You can use syllables that you and your students work out, like peanut butter. It does not have to be formal, unless they're already learning a formal system, in which case you can supplement that. So, you discuss the sound properties of a pan. I'm a very, very true, strong believer in if your student knows how your instrument makes sound, your student will get a better sound and get desired sounds and have more choices. So I play percussion, many percussion instruments. It's very important that I know how they all make different sounds, and then I can be more musically expressive. And the same goes for pan. And I've become a better pan player as a result. So start there, and also start then with the pitches. Explain why they're there, explain why they are set up that way. Often the why helps the how and the what. Get used to the instrument itself. Then, this is a big one. And this also goes back to things that my colleagues who teach in the primary and secondary schools know. Drawing is important. So, draw your instrument. If you've never tried this, go home today and do it. Drawing is wonderful for adults, and most of us do not do it. There are studies and studies. This should say studies abound, not abode. But they abound about the personal benefits of drawing. And, by the way, note-taking. So some of them are very recent, and I can call my stepbrother right now, and he'll recite them all to you. He doesn't allow his students to take notes in his classes because he has a lot of grad students who can help. But writing your own notes and drawing your own pan, holy cow, it's a wonderful thing. Your comprehension of your instrument will definitely improve. And while you're doing it, try to sing those notes, check your drawing, check it by ear against your actual instrument, check it by sight. Then you introduce that kinesthetic knowledge. You seep in the sound, you seep in the pattern, and then you really seep or pay attention to your arms. So I'd like everyone to imagine your instrument, and you need to close your eyes for a moment, whatever your instrument is, and imagine it in front of you. You can imagine it with the colors that it has, or fancy, awesome colors that you wish it had, and imagine the note pattern. And as you are imagining it, if you were in front of it, you could look down, and then imagine it again. Imagine it floating in the air in front of you. So this is where I would have a student see if they were doing the right thing. And then, depending on the student, maybe they're working on 2 notes, maybe they're working on a scale. And that imaginary pan, I have them visualize mallets, their hands and their sticks playing in the air the right notes, always the right notes. And if they have to keep checking in order to play each next note correctly, that's fine. If you've never studied memorization or visualization away from instruments, by the way, I've got great sources. I still use this to learn. But as I've laid out, you do it first while you look at the pan, do it next while you look straight ahead but still have peripheral, and then you do it while you close your eyes. Then while you look at the notated pitches, read them. Reading is important. You're going to hear yourself say C and D, and you look at the pan. So you're connecting your aural and your visual. Then you read them out loud, connecting your aural and visual, and then you sing them. Singing and reading like a book is very important. Then you sing them, you look at them, you sing them without looking at them, you sing them and look at them, you sing and you play while reading, and you play that pan in your head. And then you put them all together. And if you need to keep backing up and then putting them together again, that's fine. I still do that for some very difficult passages. And that's it. Hey, I made it. So that's my favorite article, by the way, for mental practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to our speakers. We will now have question and answer. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question to any of our panelists?
Good morning, everyone. Clearly, this was for a taller person. I found what you all had to say very, very interesting. And somebody said earlier, it's more of a comment, that we really have to move away from looking at creative people as those people who they cannot do anything else, so let us put them in that area. And you said somebody talked about the budget, that when it comes down to your AV, whatever is left, they give. And when you consider, research has been done, how much money the creative sector contributes to the GDP of most countries, I still cannot understand why they just don't get it. Because we have so much talent in this country, and it is about time we get serious. It is nice to see that there are people like you who get it. And thanks for imparting it to the students. From the time they enter, children start learning music in the womb, and I know of a 2-year-old who was already singing Fast Wine. So, thank you so much.
Anyone else?
Hi, good morning. The guy from Tranquil, the marching band, why use the marching band drums? Our culture doesn't reflect marching band. So I'm saying, if you use a natural African drum, is it better?
All right, good question. One of the reasons why we use the marching drum, one, because of availability, because in that school, since I've been there, I started a marching band, right? And there are more marching drums than we have the African drums, right? And then further to that is the fact the technique of playing African drums in terms of knowing the different tone on the skin is a little bit more, I shouldn't say a little bit more technical than actually having a pair of six and hitting the drum and alternating left and right hands. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, I guess it will answer the question in your opinion, but I mean, I'm talking about the wider.
Or in the wider.
Population, they love marching drums.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. But it was something that was readily available at the school for the purpose of the study.
Hello, for the second on your right, I liked your talk about like the adaptability of using like the different senses to learn different things at different times. I think it's very important to be as adaptable as possible in each given situation because each given situation is different. How do you think that we can implement that kind of a less rigid way of learning in the education system in Trinidad today to enhance the creativity in that way?
I feel a bit at a disadvantage because I am still learning about the education system at Trinidad and Tobago. But overall, we have had similar issues in the US as Trinidad. We have had the same emphasis on national testing standards and more limitation on time in schools and less arts in schools. And as a result, we have less time to teach or to be creative, rather, less time to teach skills like critical thinking. Mm-hmm. So I understand that we're at a disadvantage. So I think it does go back to the money, and I have finally seen in the state where I'm originally from, they reached such a state of low budget that it took some arts organizations going to their local representatives and saying, do you know that the most money made in your district is made by this theater and this orchestra? These arts organizations support you the most. Or the biggest employer in your district is this ensemble and this steel band. And Mr. President, do you know of the university that the steel band is bringing in more money than anybody else in the college? So things like that have started to help. Mm-hmm. So perhaps our biggest problem of the budget is maybe going to be our way out of it. Right. Because I think that creative time is, and just time and flexibility, ability to play, so to speak, is essential.
Agreed. Thanks.
We do have time for one more. Yes.
Hi, good morning. So for our first panelist, I would like to know, you said that there was a significant difference between the I won't say the control group, but the students' performance before and after. What statistical tests did you use to determine the significance level?
Prior to the start of the project, we did a pretest. Now the pretest was similar to the posttest in that the same note patterns that were used in the pretest were used in the posttest. But during the ruling out of the project, what I did is actually teach students the speech cue. So when they look at the note patterns, it became easier to them so that when they saw the posttest, they were able to do it a little better than they did in the pretest.
Yeah.
All right?
Do you plan to take your studies further with larger sample sizes and more robust statistical analyses?
Well, it's a possibility, but I mean, this was something that I did when I pursued my diploma in education, and I thought it necessary to share it here, and that I did that like since 2013 or 2014, right? Since then, I would have there's a marching band. There was a marching band in the school, right? And I would have utilized that, the information gathered from there, and developed the band itself. But now the band is kind of defunct because of money and getting equipment, because when you keep using equipment after a while, you need to change them and fix them. So right now it's kind of dormant. But yes, it's something that could be done further. It could be taken further. And probably, and with your suggestion, I guess I'll plan to do that in the future.
Yes, there's a great opportunity there. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And for our second panelist, Mrs. Achaiba, I'd like to know at what point in your career, you said 33 years of teaching, at what point did you realize that the psychology of the children plays such an important role, and how important is it to you in guiding your pedagogical methods?
Okay, first of all, I find within the last 20 years of teaching music, I have noticed there have been a lot of mental, mental discrepancies with some students, and because of some of them would be angry, because of their different ways of life, some of these children come to class with different attitudes. And when you have these different attitudes, you need to be able to pinpoint or pick out what it is, why it is these children are like that. Like, for instance, a child might come and he will be, jumpy all about. He can't sit down at the piano. He can't stand up behind the pan. And you want to know, and you get angry because you think he's a bad child. Okay, that's what we normally say. But that is not the issue. The issue is that he may have been suffering from one of these things like ADHD, which he could be hyperactive. And with these children, you have to be able, okay, for me, I will deal with a child like that. 15 minutes on the pan, maybe too long. 10 minutes, okay, Luke, you'll play that for 10 minutes, and you come back off. And, I'll give you a little writing. These children, certain children, have very short attention spans. You have to be able to deal with it. Okay, there are other issues. So, but I have noticed this within the last 20 years that it is very prevalent in most of the children, right? Not that particular thing, but other mental discrepancies which teachers need to be addressed. As life goes on, you have to go with the flow with different things that are in the children's lives. Okay? And maybe 20 years from today, there are other things in mental stuff that teachers need to be aware of so that they can teach these children, or else they're going to be called bad, rude. You understand what you understand? Okay? And a lot of creative people fall in this category. They fall because they are freelancers. And teachers have to be able to understand these types of children. So we need to have some subject in the, when you doing your studies on psychological evaluation of children.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Achaiba. Let's say thank you to our presenters. And thank you for your questions. We'll take a short 10-minute break while we prepare for panel number 2. So just 10 minutes. We have Roban Sidewalk Cafe available if you'd like any coffee or tea. And we also have an area where you can check out each booth in the meantime. 10 minutes. Thank you.
Hey, the Savannah